It is 7 o'clock. We're going to call the joint budget discussion with the Finance Committee to order. How many members on Zoom? So I'm going to kick it over to you so you can assemble your crew.
Great, thank you so much. Since I have remote members on Zoom, I will open the Finance Committee via roll call. Greg Marr.
Here.
Heather.
Here.
Mark.
Here.
Angelina.
Here.
Samir.
Here.
Skip.
Here.
Kyle.
Here.
And Victoria is present.
Okay. Thank you for coming in tonight's Finance Committee. I will apologize to all of you. You've been very persistent in your request to come here. I have somewhat intentionally kept you at an arm's length, hoping that we would get further in this discussion and have some ideas fleshed out before we brought you in. But very happy that you're here tonight. We can start kicking off this discussion with all of you. We'll let Evan start. He's going to walk us through the presentation. I think everybody's seen it at this point, but we do have some numerical updates based on some miscommunications.
So as I put out an email to all the groups, school committee, finance committee, select board. So when we've been talking about our override figures, we've been pulling the entire 5-year forecast in, which becomes problematic because we changed our 5-year forecast at the beginning of this fiscal year, and it's actually showing you right now a 6-year forecast. So that caused me to grab the wrong column when I was throwing this together at the last meeting. So I gave out the wrong medium and large override figures. So we're gonna just skip to those parts. The small, the 850, nothing changed. None of the figures or numbers in this chart changed. It's just where we draw the final line. We're gonna zip right over there. So we originally had talked about a 7.1 at the last meeting. It's really, if we're looking at if we're having a conversation about a 5-year override, 5 years is 5.6 million, which is about $165 dollars per year if you average it evenly between the 5 years. You go to the next slide. Broken down here, this is exactly the shortfall that you see on the forecast, except that I have broken apart each year's cumulative costs over the life of a 5-year override. So 172 in year 1, 318, 497, 637, 836. So again, on the other side, if you average across all 5 years, this is what it would actually be if we were to spend exactly what those deficits show, which, you know, they'll be close, but probably not exact. This doesn't change. You go to the next slide, yes. So then I just adjusted that full override conversation that we were having, so that would shift to about 1.5 million, 7.5 million total, which is $219 averaged across the 5 years. And well, if you go to the next one, you can see across the bottom it's 219, then 438, 657, 876, 1,095, and so it just shifts that number up, obviously, because it's more money. I also gave updated surplus, which is only a surplus if we weren't to use any of that, right? That would be what was left after you knocked out your deficit, and added the 1.5 million across what we were expected to spend per the forecast. All right, I think that's it for updates. It was just those two, it was those two sections that I had to go back and tweak.
Any questions for anybody that they want to follow up with on that?
No, that's clear.
No, but can we talk about them?
Sure.
I mean, we asked, the select board asked Evan to put these scenarios together, and it doesn't feel to me like we've really had much discussion about it after having put them together. So I'd love to just open some discussion about, you know, what we want to offer the voters, and what, you know, what the size of an override might be, and what service levels we would want to let people vote on. I think it's a, you know, part of my reasoning for asking for some multiple options was to have this discussion, because I think it's important. And so we've got a range of options here, from no override with, you know, small, medium, and large. And I think they're all valid options. But I'd love to hear some conversation about what people support in terms of funding levels. It's one of the most important things that we have to discuss.
Okay. Anybody want to kick that off? Do you want to start with your opinion?
Well, I think, you know, if the board is amenable to, you know, multiple options, I think regardless, we owe it to the voters to have a level service option. No matter how many years, that's what we've done in the past. And, you know, the whole purpose of Prop 2.5 is that, you know, if the municipality is going to be raising taxes more than 2.5%, you got to check in with the voters to make sure they're okay with that. That's the whole point of it. And I think the basis for checking in with the voters has to be level service. Otherwise, the select board is making a decision on behalf of the voters on we want to spend more or less on services, and in our discussions, which services we want more or less of. And that just completely, in my mind, goes against what we're here to do. We're not here to make decisions on behalf of the voters. We're here to check in, I think, with level services over some number of years. So that's kind of, I'm open to the strengthen option. I think that's an interesting one. It's something that a lot of people have asked for. I'm not personally in favor of the sort of small override option. As we looked at the, you know, personnel reductions, you know, we were getting into 60 and 70 numbers as we were going into years 5 and 6. And that's not a sustainable or reasonable approach for this board member. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you. I'll echo those. We talked about a couple different scenarios at our last meeting. I'm in the same camp where I think we owe it to the voters to at least put out our sustainable option. I think it would be good to have a full option out there, the strengthen option. I'm not. I don't really see the point of the small option in its current iteration, for the same reasons. I think it'd be, you know, we'd put a lot of effort into going through these motions and still have to go through painful reductions along the way. It doesn't really, in my opinion, solve the problem. I could be open to reworking that option. There was some feedback in our last meeting that a 1 or a 3 year option could be acceptable. I would, you know, if we were reworking the small option, I would want to see an FY26 level fund, the same as what we're discussing for the medium 5 year, except brought down to a 1 or a 3 year level. I'm in the same camp that I think it is our job to do the diligence, put together some good options, and then ultimately it's on the voters to choose what they want to do. I likened this to a subscription service to somebody earlier. 11 years ago, the select board and the finance committee and school committee came before the town and they said, look, the budget can no longer sustain the level of services that you're used to, we either reduce or we institute our first override. And the answer was the first override. Here's a set duration that we expect it to go. We check in at the end of those 5 years, where we thought we would be. Do you wish to continue on this path? Yep. They renewed for another override. Instead of 5, we got 6, and now we're at that crossroads again. And to me, it's, like I said, up to us to put together responsible options and then let the voting public decide.
Greg, your hand is up.
Yeah, just one note, that was 12 years ago. They both lasted 6 years. So it was 2014 for the 2015 override. We expected them to last 5 and they both lasted 6. I too would like to see multiple options. I think that's something we've heard from at least some voters, is they want to be able to say that, yes, we want level services at least from before we started cutting a couple of years ago. So I think if people are willing to allow the voters to make the choice of which override, that we start with a 1-year level services and go up from there, maybe a 3-year level services, 5-year level services, and 5-year expansion as an example. But in any case, I think we owe it to the voters to make a decision at this point. We are now basically 5 weeks, maybe 6 weeks from when people will start voting on this. So we need to make a decision.
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, I'm in complete alignment. I think that it's an innovative and relatively novel idea, Melrose aside, maybe a couple other communities aside, to have this multiple option put up to the voters. Given all the feedback that we have received, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I also agree that if we're going to split the pie, the best way to do that is on a time basis and not necessarily a size basis, because I agree the small option doesn't make a whole lot of sense because you're paying a little bit more, but yet we're still firing police officers by year 3, right? That there's really no gain in that scenario. So if our concern is the number piece of it, I think it makes a lot of sense to say, hey, will you accept it a year, 3 years, 5 years, and then we'll come and we'll check back in, right? This is the way that the letter of the law of Proposition 2.5 was written. This is a feature. It is not a bug. We are coming back to you, the voters, to make the informed decision about the sort of community that you want to live in and that you want to, the certain level of services that you want to have. And if you choose to check in 3 years, well, that's something that we're happy to do for you if you tell us that. Kyle.
I do want to highlight, I think it's worth noting that we did have 2 5-year overrides that we stretched to 6 years. So it's not that we're just taking the 5-year overrides, running with them, and hoping for the best. There are cuts and optimizations we're making to this budget, and that the department's making to the budget over the course of the years. I know there have been departments that have been merged into others or shut down in names of efficiency. I know, speaking to each of the departments, there's a lot that they're doing without or making do with to be able to make this budget last. I think that does go worth noting. I do want to be cognizant of, I know last year we talked about doing 1-year overrides or micro overrides, and I don't have the exact reasons or memory as to why, but I know we 3 and 5 is preferred for bargaining purposes for the unions, I believe. 1-year overrides makes those negotiations more difficult. So I believe that's why we did kind of lean away from that last year, or at least some folks, myself included, leaned away from that last year. So I do want to caution against, or maybe rehab that discussion or caution against the 1-year overrides for that reason.
That's a fair point. Angelina, please.
I also would not be in favor of a one-year override. I think that would make it very difficult for the bargaining units. And I think it would create more of an atmosphere of like contention in what's happening. I also, and I know you guys tabled this, but I'm going to bring it up anyway because it's the CPA funding is like $800,000 in taxes that we're paying for CPA funding every year. Our gap is 1,136,000, and I know that it's not a swap. It's not like, oh, you know, you can just, we can take that CPA funding and move it over here. But if we're talking about people's total tax bills, I don't understand how we aren't considering giving people the option to get rid of that and shift, like, as far as your overall tax bill is concerned, it's going to go down by 1.5%, and then it's going to go up by the amount of the override. So it's going to be a difference of just the gap there instead of adding the override on top of the CPA funding that we're already paying for. So just, you know, when I heard that brought up in the first place, I thought this is the first idea that I've heard that's actually going to move the needle as far as like a good chunk of money. And when we're talking about giving people, when we are talking about giving people the opportunity to decide what they want to spend money on, I think that has to be part of the conversation. Like when we added the CPA funding, we had a conversation and that was what people wanted to spend money on. And now we're in a position where groceries are, you know, 30% more than they were 5 years ago, and a lot of other things are going up. And I just wonder if people still would feel the same way about those funds, or if they would feel better about shifting them to what else the town is spending money on. So
I just had, my answer to that question is, what do we have committed of that $800,000 already that we can't wipe out, so to speak, by
well, it's
discontinuing
800 a
the
year if I'm understanding it right.
There's projects underway.
Yeah, but we haven't committed to funding projects, so
Okay.
how much of it that would actually change if we kind of decided to do away with that now? It's, you know, people will hear 1.5%, but I'm sure that we have a good chunk of change is committed to long-term funding of projects.
We had asked Evan to look into that at one of our meetings. The staff was gonna talk to, I think it was Stuart, and see if they could figure out what our obligations going forward were. Do we have any of that information yet?
No, I stopped working on that because the board had said they weren't interested in going that route. So,
Okay, I thought we as FinCom had said we would be interested in that after they said they weren't really interested. But I thought you had said you were gonna follow up,
Okay.
but maybe I just misunderstood.
no, it could be me too, Greg.
Okay.
So let me, we can regardless put that together.
Yeah.
So,
And if I might, because I know that you reached out, or you and I might have had some conversation. My recollection is I wasn't at the meeting in real time, but I hopped in when you guys had a discussion relative to this. And at the next meeting, or even that night, we were looking for more information in terms of what the percentage is. Could we even go down a percentage? What we can change, in addition to what our obligations were. So I know, and then I know you referenced that there was an email that came through, but maybe everyone didn't see that, or
no, but then in open session, you guys took a straw poll and decided it wasn't something you were gonna pursue.
We found, you instructed us that we could not reduce, so one of the things we talked about was
Right. So-
reducing the percentage, right? We're at 1.5%. Westboro had been brought up as coming in at 0.5%. You gave us confirmation that we could not reduce it down to 0.5%. The lowest we could go was 1%. We had also talked about increasing the exempted amount, and you gave us the update that that was not possible either. So it was at that point that we decided, again, you know, we straw polled the board and decided not to move forward with that option. I don't,
maybe I wasn't here.
you know, Matt brought it up at our last meeting, the idea of reducing to 1%. It was a discussion that, you know, the two of us had beforehand, and then we, it's more an open session, but, I think there were still some question marks about what we have for obligations, financial obligations with them moving forward. If, what we can close out, if there are still outstanding obligations and whatnot. CPC is still taking applications for projects, heading into Springtown meeting. It's a busy time for them. And with this short timeline, giving it the time that it needs to be discussed. I wouldn't say it's an option that we can't discuss in the future. It's still something that we could talk about instituting, for potentially fall town meeting or next spring. Excuse me. But gives us the opportunity to dig in a little bit more into that specifically, meet with the CPC, give them a chance to, articulate why they feel we should or should not do this, as opposed to mixing it in with all the budget stuff that we have going on now. This has a much harder deadline. I'm in a similar camp. I think we've done a lot of good work with our CPA funds. I do feel like it could be a reasonable hold. But that's just one member's opinion, but we are going to come back to it at least and have another discussion about how we handle it moving forward.
On the other hand, I think that's something that if we're going to ask the voters to increase their taxes, we should at the same time ask them if they want to decrease their taxes.
I just think it might be kind of hard to put all this out a la carte to them. We're talking about a lot of different things. You have to put all this stuff on the table and see how you're going to explain any of it in a fashion that might actually work, given the short period of time that we have. It's going to be tough. As Angelina mentioned, when this first came about, now groceries are 30% more. They might even be more than that. It was a great program. There was a lot of matching money at the beginning because a lot of towns weren't involved in it. That's funding has become more dispersed. It hasn't petered out, but our help from the state funds has dropped.
It's like
So it's not quite as an attractive thing as it was before. But the same thing could be said of putting anything out for any department in the town is saying, okay, well, we want to have like a Board of Health budget without these things, or we want to have a school budget without any school sports, or we want to have a town budget without a police department, or something like that. That's going to get to be kind of tough to do. There's one thing that I would really like to see happen as part of all of this is we have a tool here that needs to be used by everyone, and it's ClearGov. That, regardless of what department, maybe this won't come out the right way, but I don't care to hear from anybody in this town, regardless of what department they're in, that they don't want to use it, that they don't have to use it. They should all be using it. It's very transparent, and if we want to put out an override and say, we're going to guarantee you these things as part of the override, people have to be able to go in and see that it got used for those things. It gets hard to advocate for something and then not be sure that we delivered on it. And without having this be used in this fashion, how's anybody ever going to really know they got what they voted for?
Mr. Chair. Part of what you're saying, Skip, I agree with. There's a lot to consider on May 10th or 11th. So this might be a little bit of a bigger swing. But Angelina, to your point, my initial position on CPC stuff was it's the only place in town that the town budget where there's a fence around everything, where you get some money back from the state. There's some matching funds, and it's the only place that's guaranteed to do something, make some contributions, positive contributions to the town. But just listening to everyone, not just here tonight, but in general, as what happens with me, well, my position is probably evolving a little bit. So worthy of discussion. I just think it's a lot, and I think you're onto something here. I just think it's a lot for May 10th. It's just this is big, and if we're going in with more than one single option, multiple years or multiple amounts, and multiple years, that will be the piece that's really important to educate the residents and just be in lockstep on what we're trying to accomplish. I think peeling that one piece away for the time being, it probably has to be done anyway because there's so many different logistical things that need to be dealt with to untangle it or dismantle it. So I'd probably be in favor of pausing that for now and focusing on this piece. So, and as far as this piece is concerned, Mr. Chair, my personal position would be a longer term, bigger picture, strategic sort of option. For me, 1 year, that's just, who wants to we all like each other, right? Want to do this again next year? Let's have some fun with this. Probably not. And that's where we wind up. And if it's going to, then it could go like, well, let's just do it 1 year from now on. That's a lot. And I am in favor of thinking long term, strategically, and trying to reconcile the problem for as long as we possibly can. Whether it's a penny or a pound, that's a different story, but the longer term is what I'm in favor of. And I probably have said this a few times, but for the record, 3 to 5 is where I'd be, at least, not 1. So, and also, if I might, Evan and Mary, thank you for putting all this together. Imagine it took you a few minutes, a few days, maybe a few weeks. And it's a lot to consider, and it's a lot to review, and I know how you do it, and just wanted to say personally, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
So I'm just, to go back to the CPA thing, I know I was absent for a meeting, but either way, I think I would like to get that information. I don't believe that I know that there was a reference made to an email. I'm trying to find it in real time, but I don't see it. So, you know, the questions relative to what the percentage was, which may have been clarified, but I think it's valuable for us to say it here. Changing the amount that can be exempt in addition to what our obligations are.
Sure.
Then, so that's just one separate thing. And relative to the tiered approach, while I saw that as well, kind of online, and I appreciate that you brought it up, Matt, as, you know, a creative idea. When I looked a little bit more into it, I'm not sure if you saw correspondence that came through, but someone reached out to me with some more information, and I did a bit of a deeper dive. So my concern with it, as it stands, is that in Melrose, what ended up happening, which I thought it was curious, that they turned down an override 1 year and then approved like the biggest override maybe ever the following year. And I think that in part the reason could have been that the way the law relates to this, the 2.5%, the smallest override amount in Melrose that year passed by 59%. The middle tier was 56.5%, and the largest tier, meaning the one that passed, only had a 54% yes. And the way it works is you go with, so because any of them passed, they went with the highest one. That's how it works. So I think
Yes.
that I want to clarify that, or I looked into that, and for that reason, for me, I would not favor going with this approach. Certainly not without the ability to understand that more fully, because the more I thought about it, even just trying to explain like how the voting would go, what does a no mean, what does a yes mean, do you vote multiple times? And I know we could get that all out to people, but even though initially I thought, you know, this sounds like kind of a different idea, there was that part of it initially that lent me some pause. How does this look for everybody, and, you know, including myself, with I feel like a relative decent knowledge about this. But then when I did a bit of a deeper dive in terms of how it works, I'm not sure that that's what we want, is that the majority of folks could vote for a certain tier, and yet a different tier would ultimately win. So.
Well, nothing passes unless the majority of people vote for it.
Right, so,
But a bigger majority voted.
love to hear from Mark.
Yeah, Mark, please.
Yeah, I just want to say I completely agree with Anne Marie. One of the things when you do a multi-tier override is the confusion that voters have I'd like to go in with an override that we're all committed for, we're all committed with, and we really work hard to get that override passed. It worked in 2014, it worked in 2020, and I think we should keep that same level of service going. So I would like to see a 5-year level service override proposal go forward to the voters. I don't want to confuse the voters. If we had more time to sell a multi-tier year override and explain it better, but I don't think there's enough time to do that. I think the voters in Grafton are familiar with the 5-year override approach, and I think that makes a lot of sense. So I'm on board with what Anne Marie just said, and I think it makes a lot of sense to just pick a number, pick a level of service that you want to go, and I think level service is important, and I think you should put that out there for a 5-year override. And I think that's the decision now, and I think we have a better chance of getting that passed than putting out multiple options without a lot of time to explain it. Thank you.
So as I understood it, look, I guess I want to be really clear. Part of the multiple override option was to get discussion going about levels of service. So I'm not married to that idea. As I said earlier, I think it's imperative that we at least provide a level service option. And if that is the sort of consensus on the board, I agree. We're starting to run out of time, and we need to make some decisions. So I'm not married to that at all. To just address a little bit that email that we got, the intention of the ballot basically is to gauge the highest level of investment in the town that the majority of the voters would support. And so we're not having voters choose one option between the three, which would be, and then you would get a sort of a real gauge of, if they only had one to choose, what would the most support. It's designed to sort of be tiered like that. So I'm comfortable with that approach, but if there's concerns about it, I'm not stuck on that at all. It was just an idea, and I thought it would help us. I've been desperate to move this conversation forward a little bit. So, if it's not something that other board members are interested in, then I'm okay with that.
Mr. Chair?
Mm-hmm.
So is that something, is it too complicated, Evan?
What do you mean?
To do a tiered approach, 3 options? Does that really result in sort of chaos or confusion?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, even in, again, not to keep harping on Melrose, but to look at what, I mean, they spawned off a separate 501c3. They had like 8 months to get the public prepared for it, and it's still a complicated venture. I think it's kind of neat. I like the idea of being able to put out to residents a whole bunch of different options and people can pick from it. But I do think that given, that we're in the beginning of March, that'd be a lot of voter information to be putting out and trying to educate people on. So it's probably, at this point, you're probably best off to pick what level of service you want to see move forward and go from there.
Angelina?
Can we just talk for a minute about level service versus the slightly expanded services, as far as like, I know that Jay had some requests for additional things this year, but I don't believe those ended up in his request, right? It was kind of just like literally level. So how does the level service impact us being able to, sort of support things going forward? Is it built to just give increases to the people that we have and not add staff when we need them, or like how is that shaking out?
Essentially, yes. So the level services approach does restore the human resources position at the school, and it does take into account the addition of up to 2 firefighters. But otherwise, it's status quo with every other position.
And it's not cutting the 10 or 11 positions we were talking about.
Right. Level services is exactly what we have today, with the caveat that there's a little bit of growth in there. So You know, it's
Yeah, I just,
Are we
just
done
wanted to go
adding
back
police
meetings to,
officers?
well, it depends on who you ask. We're at 24 right now. The chief has said that we're okay at 24. You know, I think it's just a conversation that we need to keep on the front burner as we get more people and as things change over time and we see different things happening in the community. We just need to be able to react to that. But in the expanded version, I did provision for one additional police officer. But that was it.
So the original gap was like 1.4. So now we're down to 1 point for this year for
Right.
for FY27.
1.192, I think is what it is.
So, and a lot of that was health insurance. Was that
Correct.
is
Yeah.
that
So
correct?
we made the switch to GIC. GIC has made some cost cutting measures or put in place some cost cutting measures. And we have seen a decrease in what we were able to forecast, which does have big impacts when you start going out into years 3, 4, and 5. And so that was a big shift for us. We also made some tweaks to revenue, which we are, you know, borderline comfortable with. But you know, there's a lot that can happen in the environment that we're not going to control. Anyway, if we went into another recession or you know, housing market crash, it doesn't really, almost doesn't matter what we put in there for revenue. You're not going to come anywhere close to it. So, but I think that covers pretty much how we got to those better numbers. So
Good job with health insurance.
thank you.
Question, like, and I don't know if Evan, you know the answer to this, but in terms of like our transportation costs for the schools, how was our contract? Are we locked in like is it a year or is it 5 years or what? Because what I'm getting at is we are seeing a lot of things happen externally that can impact the cost that we can't control, right? So
Right.
transportation, maybe health insurance, maybe other spend. Like, how are we thinking of that? Because I know level service is level, right? You're assuming nothing changes. However, we live in a world in which something changes every weekend. You turn on the news, right? And
Right.
we saw the gas prices this week. So, like, how are we thinking of that in terms of level service? I know we build in a buffer percentage potentially, but how are we thinking of that?
As far as school transportation, I'll defer to the superintendent for that. That's not something I have top of mind, or Mary and I can get you that information and send that out to the group. As far as the larger picture of trying to insulate ourselves from that, you know, change, we do have that conversation pretty much throughout the entire budget process, and I'm sure the schools are doing the same thing. So we're looking at our energy prices, we're looking at what our contracts are. So we buy fuel in basically in chunks, right? So we have fuel contracts, we have salt contracts, we do a lot of these 3-year plus contracts. We also put in a provision, this was right when I got here, we allowed some contracts to be able to go out to even 10 years, which is a local option. We haven't really exercised that beyond some like longer term engineering things that we have going on, that it's a 10-year project, so have the same person for 10 years. But we will leverage that sometimes if we need, you know, if we think that that's going to be better for the town. We actually have some correspondence with some of our vendors from this week, even talking about, you know, the bombing of Iran and what that's doing to the local market, and whether you might want to contract early or you might want to try to ride it out. So we are having those conversations, but yeah, it's always something. It's a different week.
Greg?
Thank you.
So just so we're on the same terms, level services right now is last year we cut 6.5 positions from the schools with the understanding that one of those would be coming back this year. This is level services after those cuts, not level services before we decided to make cuts last year. That would be more along the large option that Evan presented, is restoring those positions that we cut last year.
Correct. So, I mean, we've heard opinions from 3 of the board members tonight, and I think, you know, Ms. Foley, you've shared what you're not in favor of, but at this point, I think it'd be helpful if we could flesh out what you are in favor of.
What was I not in favor of? I mean,
The multiple options. At our last meeting, you said you were going back and forth between a 1 and a 3, but then I saw a comment that you don't necessarily support a 1. So any information you can share would be appreciated.
well, I think I'm, again, trying to take this all in and, land. Still trying to sort out where I'm going to land. I don't think that a 1 year, makes much sense for a myriad of reasons. I'm not sure I want to push it out 5 years either, though. So, should get it down. 3 years is, I think, something that I could support, but I'm still taking in all the information. And the number for me, as we're fleshing out tonight, is something that's quite important in terms of, not just the years, but what is the number that we're going to come up with.
Okay.
I hear everyone and completely agree about the 1 year option, and am sensitive to the amount of time that we have to educate the voters on a 3 and a 5 year option. So just like Matt, not necessarily married to being innovative in a time crunch, but I do think it was a great idea and coming from a great place, and I think there's a lot of potential there, particularly moving forward. From my perspective, the number that we land on, I think has to be married to the amount of time, and I don't think that, or the amount of time that we hope to get out of that particular override number. I don't know if it's worth anyone's time or effort to go to the town with a number smaller than level services. Again, asking folks for more, yet not providing the level of services that they're used to, in light of not giving options, right? If you get a yes or no vote on one single option, to me, it does not make sense for that option to be pay more but receive less. That just doesn't seem logical to me. I could even see an argument for pay more, receive more, going for sort of the larger restoring the 2025 staffing and services levels in the schools, for instance. That might make sense. But I think that the number itself aligns with the amount of time that we would like to have before we go back to the voters and ask for this again, because we are an override dependent town, given the laws that the state of Massachusetts has bestowed so graciously upon us. Mark, please.
Evan, can you put back up the slide that shows the options, please?
Yep.
And while he's doing that, I guess I'd ask the select board a question. It seems to me that you realize that an override is needed. I think we said that. And to go on Greg's point, I think when the town made the decision last year to fund a budget that cut those positions, I think we set a new level services area. And I think that new level service area is FY26. So looking at the chart that Evan just put up on the screen. Evan, just to confirm, this is the level service based on the FY26 budget,
Correct.
keeping those moving forward, correct?
Yep.
So I think the select board has two choices here. I think everybody said the 1 year override makes absolutely no sense because we'll be back having the same discussion next year. And I agree with Mark that it makes no sense to do that. So I think the select board tonight, I would urge the select board tonight to make a decision on an override of either $3.378 million or $5.682 million. I think you need to set the thing that this is a level service budget and that we're either going to do 3 years or 5 years. Take that vote tonight and move the matter forward. And I would really urge you to do either a 3-year override at 3.378 million or a 5-year override at $5.682 million. And hopefully if you go with the 3-year, it lasts 4, and if you go with the 5-year, it lasts 6. But I think it's March 10th and we're voting on May 19th. There's not a lot of time to get the word out. So I would really urge the select board to right now, 3 years or 5 years, 3.3 million or 5.6 million. And if it would help having a vote of a recommendation from the finance committee to help you do that, I'd be more than happy right now to make a motion that the select board consider a 5-year override at the amount of $5.6 million.
Just to clarify, voting starts somewhere around April 21st.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. You have early voting, Greg, right?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying? Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So my recommendation would be 3.5 million for 3 years or 6 million for 5 years, just to make it nice round numbers for people to understand.
I'm fine with that, but I'd still say that I'd like to see the 5-year at the, if you say it's $6 million, Greg, I would like to make that motion that we recommend to the select board tonight that they take that position.
Absolutely.
So if somebody wants to second that from the FinCom, I'd
Second.
appreciate that.
We have a motion from Mr. Haddad to recommend that the select board takes a vote this evening on a override for, was it $6 million?
Over 5 years.
To last approximately 5 years. The dollar amount is what would be on the ballot. And we have a second. Any discussion on the motion?
Can we talk about rounding up? I don't think.
It's a significant roundup. Yeah.
It is. It's like, it's a.
Well,
it's
then
a big
leave it. Then
number.
leave my original
I mean,
motion
if
at
you went to like
5.6.
5.8 or what 5.7, like I could see that,
Yeah.
but like, you know, not doing an override for $802, like if you want to make it the next.
Yeah.
But
900.
I wouldn't round all the way up to 6 million personally, because I just feel like that's.
I'll
Mark was
amend
gonna
my
take that out of
my
his pocket.
motion if somebody will second it to make it 5.7 million.
So moved.
Okay.
Seconded. Yeah. 5.7 million. All right.
Maybe a quick question on these numbers. Is there any risk or variability that they could change?
Yeah,
They're,
100%.
they're
There is,
already,
right?
they're already
Oh, right.
different.
There always is.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, these are our. We're comfortable with where we are with our estimates, given the
Like you
information
said
that
for
we.
next week, this wouldn't change by say $300,000 for the 3-year, 3.3, or the
Probably not.
Okay.
But it doesn't. At a certain point, you've got to
Yeah.
you've got to pick where you're going to go.
Exactly.
And there's a lot of things in the environment that shift, and we deal with them as they come, and that's just
The
kind of how.
the state hasn't approved the budget yet, so they could increase or decrease our Chapter 70 funds by hundreds of thousands of dollars.
PVT, we haven't been notified yet.
Right, we don't know BBT till the 12th.
Right, and part of this sort of motion is, yes, it's numerical, but what we're asking for is the 5-year option, right? And that's what our recommendation is, and whatever that number does.
Yeah, trying
Fall
to tag
to.
anything to any of the contracts would be silly because we don't have any, they're all over the place as to when they were gonna expire and
Sure.
be coming up again every week.
Sure.
anyway, so.
I think 5 years makes a lot of logical sense if for no other reason, the best predictor of the future are the things that have happened in the past. And we've had great success twice now with thank you, ma'am,
Yeah.
with a 5-year override. Angelina, please.
I think also 5-year would be the way to go, because I think what it does is it votes confidence in our, like, in the towns. It tells like our staff, our teachers, our police officers who are not getting paid what they could get in Westboro, that the town appreciates them and wants to keep them and wants to pay them as best that we can. And I think that that's what the 5-year message sends. I think that we are, you know, a lot of work has been done on this. A lot of work has been done to save money by switching the health insurance and other things that we've done throughout this process, things that were done last year to cut from the budgets. And I think that the 5-year tells the people who are here that we support them and we appreciate them and we want to keep them. And we want to keep music, for the love of God.
Beautifully said.
Just.
Any further discussion on the motion? All right, seeing none,
I
we'll,
know what I want to do, Mr. Chair.
Well, hang on.
Well, we
But
gotta
let them
them
vote.
wrap up.
apologies.
I guess my one thought would be if we did do the 3 years versus the 5, if we did want to try to do a multi-step approach at some point in the future, this does push that out significantly. Versus 3 years would be a shorter time. I think we're kind of, I guess if that is something we would like to do in the future, and the reason we didn't do it this year is because we didn't have time to talk about it, this does push that out quite a bit. But I also see the other sides of it, so that's just my 1 point discussion.
It's a fair point, and I think that the onus is on the finance committee and the select board and the school committee in the upcoming 5 years to be as diligent as possible. I know that the town has been incredibly diligent about spending the resources that they have in front of them from the previous overrides, which is, I mean, self-evident by being able to stretch both of them out an additional year, right? So I think continuing those conversations and continuing to be fiscally responsible will hopefully help offer that to some extent, but that there also just does have to be an awareness that we are override dependent. We are going to be coming back to this conversation unless there are massive policy changes and that the town agrees that services are to be cut.
Let a few more towns make the 3 option
Ah,
things and see what happens.
the more guinea pig.
Yeah,
example.
let the other 350 cities and towns in the state do it a couple times and see what happens with them.
I don't dislike that point, but point well taken, Kyle.
Yep.
All right. If there's no further discussion, I will take a roll call vote. Greg.
He's
Aye.
having it quick.
Mark.
Aye.
Heather.
Aye.
Angelina.
Aye.
Samir.
Aye.
Skip.
Aye.
Kyle.
Aye.
Victoria votes aye. That motion carries.
Thank you, Finance Committee. Mark, did you want to share?
Nope, I'm good.
I thought you said you wanted to do something.
No,
Change
I'm
his
good. I'm good.
No, you're
Taking it all
he
in,
made
it's
up
all
his
good.
mind.
If I might, I'm landing on the 3-year. I'm not in favor of rounding up. In fact, I'm in favor of rounding down. But then my other concern would be relative to a vote. Are all of us going to be here next week? I'm not doing this to push it out, or don't accuse me of kicking the can, but do we know if all of us are going to be here next week? Oh, Mark, you're not. Okay. Okay. March hasn't been a good week or month
Nope.
for us to all be able to be here.
But I'll give it a shot. I mean, I'm not gonna be here, but I'd have to zoom in, and it would be for 5 minutes. So I'm going to an important conference, but I literally could just step out if it needs it. I think we should do that, yeah.
I'm only here via Zoom next week as well, but I can be here via Zoom.
Do you wanna-
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to the finance committee. I agree with that recommendation. I think it makes a lot of sense to me. In addition to confidence in our staff, and it also provides stability, and I think that's really important for all departments in town to have that kind of long-term stability. I would love to have some more strategic discussions after we're kind of through this process. To talk about, we have at least one board member that's really concerned about, what's driving the override dependence. I think we're going to talk about that a little bit more tonight. But you know, I would be in favor of doing something like funding a budget study to look just at independent. I don't know if it's a thing, but just an independent study to look at Grafton's you know, revenues and expenditures and our history and trends and the service levels that we provide relative to other towns. And it's not a simple thing to do. So we had a sustainability commission that tried it a few years ago, and they had some success, but it's really complicated, and I think you need to be professionals at that sort of analysis and data gathering. The data's all there, but to produce adequate comparisons and sort of trustworthy recommendations, I think it's a bit of an art form. But I'm completely in for that kind of analysis. I'm confident in what Grafton does, and all of the data that I look at points me to the same sorts of things. You know, there isn't any fiscal mismanagement, and we have a really heavy dependence on residents to fund our taxes. That's just the reality of Grafton. But if, you know, so I'd love to see some independent analysis. I don't think that sort of putting another commission together would make sense, because I watched how the last one struggled, and there was definitely some value that came out of that. But in service of trying to get it done more thoroughly and more quickly, I would probably look to outside resources. But I'm completely, like, I'm in total support of data-driven decisions. I think it's really important that we do that. But we keep sort of focusing on, you know, this year we've spent so much time on this year's budget. We haven't had that broader discussion about, you know, what our vision is for the future of the town and what our different service levels should be and what the needs of the town are, and all of those plans that we put together that express what people want in this town, and sort of married that with some actual analysis of what some of our options are. That we don't have a lot of options. The only option that I can contemplate is sort of managing the pace of growth. Instead of hiring a fire, department full-time person every, year or two, we might have to stretch it out to every 5 years and just tell those guys, you got to just deal with it. But I feel like that is the approach that has been taken, and what we've been doing over the last dozen years is catching up from that. There was a reason that we had to right-size the police department. We had to hire a few in successive years. It's because that was sort of frozen for a really long time. And I remember just on finance committee, Chief Crapo coming in every single year going, it's not great, but I guess I can make it work. And it was that story over and over again. So I don't know. I would love for this board to engage in that kind of analysis and investigation, and pair that with a longer term 5-year override at level services. Mark, I totally agree with what you're saying about, with the reductions that we made last year, that becomes our new level service. That makes a ton of sense to me. And, the other thing I guess is, with a longer term override, we have 5 years approximately of levy capacity, and it gives Evan and Jay a little bit more time to optimize things and make the decisions that they may need to make, knowing what kind of funding that they're going to have in the coming years. And I think that, I've been really impressed with how this town has been able to manage the override funds. And I think a part of that is the length that we have chosen at 5 years. I think that's really important.
Is that a motion, Matt? Just
Uh,
asking.
I don't know. I think what I'm hearing, sure. No, you know, what I'm hearing from board members is we want to get together and I'll vote, right? I don't, I'm ready tonight.
It's hard. I mean, I appreciate, I'm the one who is having to zoom in, so, I don't wanna say either way.
Well, then I'll just make the motion. I make the motion that we accept the recommendation from the finance committee, with the revised, rounded figures, for 5 years at 5.7, was it? Yeah?
I'll second it. Any discussion?
Yeah, should we be waiting for the other board member to be a part of this? We can do it Tuesday, 5 minutes.
Mr. Chair?
We have a second, so we can discuss it. I mean, if that's the way you wanna go, your vote would be a no on this particular motion. Which I can vote fully no.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Sure.
I'd like to remind the board, it is March 10th. Last year, on March 18th, the board decided that it was too late to put an override on the ballot for FY25.
Thank you.
If I might, that is not how I remember it at all. I worked hard to figure out, or I should say our town administrator and our superintendent in conjunction with the board worked hard to come up with alternative ways to find money and or reduce the gap. And therefore we determined that we did not need the override. And I believe that was
And
voted on by the school
part of the
committee.
reason was that it was too late,
And that was
too
voted
late
on
in the
by
season
the
to put
school
it on the
committee
ballot.
prior to us, and I'm not sure about the finance committee.
Sorry, they held while we were in our motion, so I'll ask that the finance committee does the same for the select board, please.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to wait for all 5 members to be together and make the vote, whether it's by Zoom or in person. I'd make myself available in the next 3 days or Tuesday. I don't think you make that vote without all 5 members.
Okay, so you said you can make yourself available in the next 3 days. Is that something that the other board members can do as well?
Yeah, depends on what time.
I mean, we could in theory have
In the
a
next
meeting
week,
with one agenda item.
Yep.
To vote on this.
Tomorrow'd be great.
Well, we got to post it.
Post it and have
Yeah.
a 48-hour.
Thursday'd be great.
You can't meet again until Friday.
Right.
And Craig's a question mark. I'm not entirely sure why he was absent tonight, but I don't know if that impacts his availability for the week or what.
and can we do something Friday that's not in, like in the, is it any, we can do any time? Essentially that we come up with, right?
Right. Yep, as long as we just pay attention when we're posting it on Wednesday.
Or
Right.
Tuesday. Does an earlier time work for you, or is next Tuesday just all around bad?
I mean, I'm not gonna be in the state for starters, and I just looked at the agenda, and the big reception ends at 7:15. I'll just cut out a little early. It does start around 6, so if you wanted to do something at 6, I can do that too. I'll just pull out, I mean, whatever.
6 o'clock in the morning, have it over coffee. You can have it whenever you want.
Well, then it's like a water commissioner meeting.
For what it's worth, earlier on Tuesday would be better for me. I can come in via Zoom, but I am committed that evening. I'll make myself available.
Yeah, I mean,
What about 5 o'clock on Tuesday?
Just do
That'd
Zoom
be
on
great.
five for everybody?
That's better.
Did you say?
You can have
I'm
it when,
flying out on Sunday.
Oh,
Well, do you want to continue with the motion at this point, or do you, and we vote and see how it goes, and then,
No, it sounds like the board wants 5 members, I understand that.
Okay.
So, we'll just wait, I'll rescind my motion.
Okay, so then we will schedule a meeting, 5 o'clock.
Good.
Next Tuesday.
What if Craig can't do that?
Hopefully we'll figure out a time that he can.
We're agreeing that next Tuesday's the latest in which this will be decided, right?
That's fair.
Regardless of
Pending our 5th member.
pending fifth member. But if,
think-
say, for example, fifth member is not available next Tuesday.
We need to figure out what that scenario is gonna look like.
And maybe Monday.
Okay, we will work to
As soon as possible.
find a date between Friday, this coming Friday, and the following Friday, that we can get all 5 board members together. Whether it's here or over Zoom, and take action on this.
Are we done with all discussion?
On the
Just
motion or in
No,
general?
not on the motion, just in general.
No, I don't think so.
I guess just to, one more point relative to where I'm coming at this from with the 3-year is, I understand that, some degree of stability for all departments, that would help in that respect. But I also hear from, residents relative to concerns with budget and is there more money here, is there more money there, or whatever concerns there are there, in addition to finances and whatnot. So I guess I would be looking at the 3-year to reduce the impact on the taxpayer, allow us to also, I feel like I was disappointed this year that there wasn't more movement on the school side relative to, revenue producing. I know in the last month or so, they talked about preschool increasing rates there and how obsolete our fees were for the rooms and whatnot. So they are looking at some of that. We talked about the road stabilization. Is there some money there that we could squeeze out? Even just silly things like the mosquito control, like just, things that we came to because of the push relative to really tightening this up. I would really like to see those through. And Mark, on finance, I will say, I know early on you said that, this is ridiculous. We should have been already all talking about this. And I have to say at this point, I agree with that. And that really I would commit and I appreciate your comment, Matt. I don't know if there is such a thing as a consultant that can look into this, but I would like to know that we have some sort of objective group. Maybe nobody in this room or on school committee, other folks and or maybe a consultant that can really look at what's going on and where we can maybe find money or what can we do different. So I think for that reason, I would go for the shorter duration and really have a solid plan as to what are we going to do going forward if things don't change. We also have fiscal 27. Is the governor really going to look at adjusting numbers relative to school funding? So, there's like some variables that are coming up. So I just want to explain kind of why I was kind of landing at the 3-year.
Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to ask Mark and Anne Marie one question. I totally respect your position that you want to have all 5 members. What I'm concerned about by waiting till next week is if the 5th member comes in and hears about this for the first time and says, I don't have enough time to consider it, I need to weigh on it, I need to think about it, will the 2 of you commit to at least voting one way or the other next week, regardless of the position of the 5th member? And I respect what you're doing, but we really are running out of time, regardless of the May 18th, May 25th, whatever, March 15th, March 25th, or whatever the dates are. I would just ask the 2 of you if you would please commit to taking a vote one way or the other next week, regardless of what the 5th member says. Does that make sense? And I say that very respectfully to the both of you.
Yeah, and again, I think, not to speak for you, Mark, but we're part of the problem in terms of our availability this month. So I'm aware and sensitive to that. But yes, that sounds reasonable in terms of where we're at and where I think I will be, after tonight's discussion. Nothing really new here, so yeah.
Yep. Same here. Well, because the town voted for 5 people, and that's really probably the right thing to do. And if it were me, I would probably would appreciate the gesture of respect of the vote, and we have the time. We'll do it.
I respect your position on that, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
So, I put together a little presentation that I would like to share, because I think it touches on some of the things that have been discussed here. Some of the I feel like misconceptions that have been shared in the past. Will, can you bring that up for me, please? Okay. So, at our last meeting, Craig threw out 7 towns, and compared Grafton's average single-family tax bill to them. I don't. I think this will help shine a light on this, but I don't think they were fair comparisons. I disagree with this assertion that it's a spending issue, or that budgets, that the school budget needs to be reined in. That these small amounts are going to make a large overall impact. So I'd like to go through some of these slides. These all came from the State Department of Revenue and Division of Local Services website. I grabbed these pie charts. They illustrate Grafton's new growth over the last 4 fiscal years. Okay, you can see very clearly by that key that residential growth is primarily what drives us. Last year it was 83.94% of our growth. So when the question comes, or the discussion points to why are we taking this back to the voters, it's not fair to burden the tax base with this. When you have grown only your residential base in this regard, that base is going to be the one that foots the bill. It's plain and simple. Next slide, please. Auburn was one of the towns that was compared. You can see here that Auburn has very drastic splits. Their average single-family tax bill is significantly lower, but you can see what their new growth was over the last 4 years. So in actuality, their average single-family tax bill is $6,307 compared to Grafton's $9,086. They are 76% residential and open space compared to our 91. They are 23.7% commercial, industrial, personal compared to our 8.65. Okay, and they have a staggering levy capacity left compared to our 200K. The only thing that they compare to us in is close proximity. Okay, they are not a town that I would benchmark Grafton against. However, in terms of when we're talking about our school staff, our municipal staff, being in this area, they are a town that we compete with in terms of, hiring and retaining staff. Okay, they have vastly different growth compared to the way Grafton has. They have a 3-way tax split, so that their commercial industrial pays more than their residential, and slightly more than their personal. Personal pays in more than commercial than residential as well. Their total single-family parcel values are almost $1 billion less than Grafton's, and they have more overall single-family parcels. Now, the way you get to your average single-family tax bill is by dividing your total single-family parcel value by the amount of parcels you have, and then multiplying that by your tax rate. So they have, like I said, less single-family money coming in because they have much more commercial, industrial, and more single-family parcels to divide that amongst. We have a higher income per capita. When we talk about competitive hiring, their insurance split is better than ours at 75-25. Their teachers' salaries are $86,000. Should be $276. 8's a typo. versus our 81,934, and they have much more full-time school employees. Millbury was another town. You know, their residential growth is obviously different from Auburn, but not quite ours. Millbury is directly adjacent. Their single-family tax bill is you know, fair share lower. Again, much less residential open space, much more commercial, industrial, personal, a decent levy capacity. They grow in a different way. Their total single-family value parcels, single-family home value parcel values, excuse me, are closer to half of Grafton's, while also having fewer homes in general, lower per capita, better insurance split. They pay their average teacher salaries almost 10,000 more a year, or just over 10,000 more a year, and have fewer school employees. Northbridge, again, similar to Millbury, lower tax bill. Adjacent, their residential growth is similar in that it is consistently above 50%, similar to Grafton. Ours was closer to 60% plus. And with their 25,596 levy capacity, much lower than ours. They still have double digits when it comes to commercial, industrial, personal. Their total single-family home parcel values are almost half of what ours are, along with fewer overall parcels, lower income per capita, better insurance split, and they pay their teachers better. Shrewsbury, again, you know, very, very different approach. Next slide. Directly adjacent, they are the second closest in terms of single-family home tax bill of the towns that we compared, and still, you know, 200 and change lower than we are, and also in the lower levy capacity group. But again, you know, vastly different growth structure than we have. Their single-family parcel values are almost triple what ours are, and they have double the single-family parcels. So again, once you start spreading these things out, you know, it makes a difference. They have a higher per capita income. One of the points that was made last week was about their insurance split, which they have two premium plans that they offer, one at a 60/40 and one at a 63/37. But the comparable plans to what Grafton offers, and the bulk of what they distribute, are 78/22 or 73/27, which are still, again, you know, those two are better than what we're paying. They pay their teachers more full-time school employees. I would have thought, offhand, Sutton would have been a little closer to us, but they're not. Again, adjacent town, lower levy capacity. Their income per capita is close. Their insurance split is the same. They still have very different growth. You can see that they're still 15% commercial, industrial, personal. Their average single-family parcel value is half. They have fewer of the single parcels. Their teachers' salaries are better. They employ fewer staff. Finally, Upton. Upton was the one that seemed to line up with us the best. This one seems like it could actually be a decent benchmark. Directly adjacent, very similar in their residential growth. They're at 95, we're at 91 in the last year. They had the closest single family home tax bill of the towns that we compared, though still a couple hundred cheaper, low levy capacity, and comparable incomes. But again, their overall home values close to half of Grafton, half the parcels that we have. Their insurance split is better. They pay their teachers more, and they have fewer full-time school employees. So, again, all I have to say, you know, you can go in and say the taxes are cheaper in the surrounding towns, and you know, Grafton is an outlier because it's higher. But when you dig into the data, we're not. We are primarily residential, so that is where the tax burden is going to be felt. That's the way we've chosen to grow, you know, forever. And you know, these other towns have vastly different funding mechanisms through their new growth that they bring in, and still, you know, even with less revenue, end up paying their school staff more. So I really, you know, I think it's disingenuous to our current employees to say that you know, or to imply that we're overpaying in these contracts, or you know, vastly out of line with what the districts around us are paying. The superintendent touched on this a few weeks ago. You know, that we are barely competitive. It takes Grafton teachers. You have to max out your steps and lanes, and have been here quite some time until Grafton reaches the middle of the pack when it comes to the average of what they're paying their teachers. But for the first two tiers, you know, that intro and middle level, we're dead last. You know, and when we bring on teachers, they tend to be more junior in their status. You know, we are not going out and tracking down senior level people. So, you know, those people are people who have stayed here for a long time, and you know, kind of cultivated their career here. So, anyways, you know, it was just looking at the data, I felt like it was very telling. You know, those new growth numbers, again, heavily residential. So to me, that answers the question of why do the residents bear the majority of taxes in Grafton? Well, that's why. Even with our best effort towards commercial growth, we are never going to come close to closing those gaps. Even though, you know, you're talking, well, it's only 5%. That is a massive number when we're getting into these things. So,
So I do have one answer for you.
Sure.
And it's a mistake that we made 35 years ago when we didn't elect to go to 2-acre zoning like Sutton has. We have 4 times as many kids or homes produced on a size of lot than we would have had we had the wisdom to not cave into people who wanted to keep those pieces of land and imagine making tons of money by selling them off for 4 times as many house lots as they could with the 2-acre zoning. That's one of the issues. The other question I would have is, what's the state reimbursement for those towns look like?
well, again, that's why you know, everything is difficult, because Upton, they get a lot more reimbursement for their schools because they are a regional school district. They get more per student. They get transportation reimbursement. You know, there are other intangibles along the way. You know, that in the information that I tried to keep there were things that have directly come up in our meeting discussions. Things like salaries. You know,
Trying to do that is exceedingly difficult to have it be valid points. Yes, the end salaries might be different, but our ability to raise funds plus what the state gives us back are 2 very important components of that end result. And when you say that, or this euphemistic, not you particularly, but when one says that we don't pay as much, well, the taxpayers may pay as much, and we may be restricted in our ability to give the taxpayer another bill to help pay this. The money that you get from the state is going to be a lot different on the other end. So if you look at other cities and towns, and the reimbursement for other cities and towns averages out to $30,000 a teacher, and we only get $20,000 a teacher, there's your $10,000. Trying to look at all that stuff, and that, again, we had Senator Moore was out here, and we talked about the Formula 70 and how it adversely impacted the cities and towns, and he said it was the Department of Education wasn't going to play with that for a long time to wait to see how it settles out. And that is what continues to hurt us. So it's not anything mystical elsewhere in the budget. We're all the cities and towns have the same ability to raise more money from their individual tax bases. We have no commercial tax base in town to speak of. It's all residential. And that's where the money's gonna come from. Last year, yeah, we didn't do an override, but we handed the town a $600,000 bill for the trash. The trash all went in as a user fee. You know, to say that other places are looking at what their user fees are, well, maybe they gotta stop looking and they gotta start charging some more if they wanna have those programs. Because we can't, the tax base can't afford it. It's simple. It's like your home budget. It's not gonna happen. We can't print money like the federal government can.
And to that point, I think Senator Moore was a little bit more direct in that conversation 2 years ago or whatever it was. In casual conversation with him since, the answer is the same.
Yeah.
We should not rely on the state. The state is not going to help us out. He is not optimistic that any update to that Chapter 70 spending is going to benefit Grafton in any way. Quite honestly, I had the opportunity to talk with him and Representative Meridian briefly at an event over the weekend. And Senator Moore expressed concern over a referendum that's at the state now to reduce the personal income tax rate from 5% to 4% over the next 3 years. That would cut roughly $5 billion annually from the state budget.
Frankly, I'd rather see it cut from the state budget and have us kick it all into the town and let us decide where we spend the money instead of sending it to Boston to let them decide.
Which is fine, but I would not think that's going to be the case. As soon as that money gets cut back, they're going to claw back the rest of it, and we are going to receive even less than what we're receiving now. Should something like that pass, it's a big maybe, but as we talk about instability in the future, it's kind of a big one.
Angelina.
I think when you look at school spending, and I've been meeting with Jay now for, I think it's 5 years, I think this is the 5th year, on the budget. And I think when he speaks about it, the one thing that I haven't heard him say in a setting like this, kind of, to put it in perspective, is that we don't have the administrative layers in our school system. So like when we met with him the last time, I said, Jay, seriously, you always say like, we do it, like somehow we're able to spend, we're at whatever, 16th in the state in how much we spend on per student from the bottom of you look at the districts that are below us in that list, and most of them aren't actual towns. It's like a charter something and like things that aren't even recognizable. There were like 2 towns that were below us. So he said, we don't have administrative layers. So like, he's like, when I was in Shrewsbury, I believe it was Shrewsbury, you would have your not curriculum coordinators, like department heads for each department. You would be a department head and you would maybe have 1 or 2 classes that you would teach. Our department heads are also full-time teachers. So that's how we do it. Like, he has created this atmosphere in Grafton of everybody pitches in, everybody does everything. He's out directing traffic. He's not now because now he's the HR director. But last year and every year that I drove my kids to that high school, he was out directing traffic. So I think the bigger conversation, I appreciate what you did, and when I was on that sustainability commission, we came to a similar conclusion when we were trying to find towns to compare. I know we ended up like with Holliston and Bellingham were kind of very similar. Upton, but then it was a regional school district, so then we went down that rabbit hole. So it was like, trying to find towns that were economically the same as us, as well as and then you would look at what they put out with their students. Like, Bellingham is tough. Like, it's a tough place. So, what Grafton puts out with the amount of money that they put in, I think is the real story. And I don't think that it's a mystery or a miracle. Like, I think that it's because of the way that the administration has run it, the way that they have fostered this attitude of everybody does everything. And that's why we are able, he bargained with the teachers union when other districts were striking and coming back after, I don't know, 5 weeks of being on strike and then getting 14% in their contract. Like, other districts were, Brookline was, I believe it was Brookline, they were on strike for so long and then they came back with this crazy increase. And when he was going into negotiations, I was like, oh no, what's gonna, because I know that our teachers don't make a lot of money, but we, in this town, like, we are taking care of them. And I think that the environment that's created there and the respect that they feel is why they negotiate the way that they do. And the idea that was tossed around that, they should be paid less and we should freeze their steps and lanes, I think just needs to be stopped. Like, that, you can't pay someone at the bottom of the pay scale compared to everyone around us and then also freeze their increases. I think that is a terrible idea.
I have just a quick spreadsheet to address that specific topic, so we can maybe pick that up next.
Sure.
Can we call him Mark real fast?
Yep, and then I want to actually just comment on your slides.
Mr. Haddad, please.
Yeah, Angelina took a lot of my thunder away. I agree with everything that you just said, and I'm glad that Matt is putting that up. But Andy, I want to thank you for that summary that you put forward. It was very, very enlightening, and I'm glad you did it because I started to do that after the comparisons were made and I ran out of time. So great job on that. But I can't remember in Shrewsbury, did you put up the percentage that the teachers pay in health insurance in your slide?
Yes, because they have
Or-
a couple different options, and yeah.
Yeah, because a statement was made last week at the meeting that the teachers pay 60% and the town pays 40%. And I'm afraid when stuff like that gets out in the community and it's stated by a member of the select board, people take that as gospel. And it really needs to be corrected because Mass General Law, Chapter 32B, does not allow you to do less than 50-50. So Shrewsbury's actually 60-40 the other way, and they have a cafeteria approach to it. So it's important that when information is given out that it's the right information. And just one last thing, I sit on school teacher negotiations for the town of Groton. I've negotiated the last 2 teacher contracts with the Groton Dunstable Regional School District. And when Jay came out with a 9% over 3 years, I applauded that because we did the same thing. And it was an amazing negotiation. And it just shows that the Grafton Teachers Education Association cares about the community, that they were willing to take 9% over 3 years when they saw other districts striking and getting 12 to 16% over that same time period. So I applaud the school committee, I applaud the school superintendent, and I applaud the Grafton Education Association for working with the town of Grafton to let that happen. So Andy, thank you so much for putting that information together. It was awesome.
Thank you. To your point, we did receive a correspondence from the Grafton Teachers Association after our last meeting, and they did provide us with Shrewsbury's insurance numbers. And it is accurate that there is a 60-40 plan under one of the HMOs, for example. The employee monthly charge for that is roughly $1,500 as compared to $796 for their 7327 contribution. Everything goes up almost twice, almost double, I should say, when you move into that to those other plans. They are, I feel dated saying this, but they are the Cadillac of insurance plans. Those 60-40 options. They are not the norm. Okay, do we want to go to your?
Yeah, I just wanted to.
So can I just ask a question just relative to what Angelina said? I'm looking up Brookline, and it's saying 2.5, 2.75, and 2.75. Unless I'm looking at the wrong years, and then another.
It might not have been Brookline who struck.
Yeah.
I'd have to look.
Yeah, and I know that Worcester, I think they got one of the highest, and theirs was like a 4.43.
For what? 4.3.
No, 443. So ours was a 333 here in Grafton.
Yeah.
And it looks like Brookline's was a 2.5, 2.75, 2.75.
So Andy, just on your slides, I think it's, I feel like it's important to understand how we got to where all of our, like predominantly the new growth is residential. Skip, you mentioned zoning, and I think that's a big part of it. Decades ago, there were decisions made that Grafton was going to be a bedroom community. We didn't want a lot of commercial or industrial. And the land use priorities in Grafton has been open space and single family development. That's mostly what's gone in. And so that's how we ended up where we're at today. There's been a lot of resistance to multifamily. There's been a lot of resistance to any kind of density or apartments. Things like apartments are really tax efficient. They don't take a lot of services and they provide a lot of tax revenue. There's been a lot of resistance to certain kinds of commercial developments. Right, wrong, or indifferent, but when we get something that doesn't look like an antique store, people get upset about it and they don't want that in Grafton. So I don't necessarily completely disagree with all those decisions, but that's why we are where we're at today. And people talk about the character of Grafton. I think that's a thing. I think that's more about the sense of community that we have amongst the people, and it's less about the physical layout of things and how much open space we have and all that kind of stuff. But there has been this pretty deliberate and systemic approach to trying to keep Grafton a bedroom community without a lot of commercial development, without a lot of multifamily residents and all that kind of stuff. So here we are. And I would say I love living in Grafton. There's over 1,000 acres of land that's open space that's been conserved in perpetuity. It's great. I love that. I'm always out on the trails. But there is a premium to living in a town like that. Those decisions ended up where we are today, and those decisions resulted in this premium, this tax premium for living in a town like Grafton. And that's where we're at. And I think it's important to mention that, that these were decisions that were made decades ago. And I think, I'd love for our board to start thinking about what are the decisions we're making today that we're either going to regret or congratulate ourselves on in the decades in the future. That is the sort of strategic view that we need to have in the decisions that we're making. So if we can just bring up the spreadsheet, I just wanted to talk a little bit about, because there has been a lot of discussion about the teacher contracts. So I used the same communities that Craig mentioned in our last meeting, and I just pulled some data from DESE. It's all out there. It's super easy to find. You can just search for average teacher salaries in Massachusetts, and it'll come right up for you. So I looked at where we were at in 2014, 2015, what the average salary was at that point, and the FTEs, and then I compared that to over 9 years, what that is in the last information, the most recent information that's available on the DESE website, which is 23-24. And I put the order for the towns is the amount of growth, percentage of growth over those 9 years. And so you can take a look at Grafton. I can't explain Auburn necessarily, but if you look at all the other towns, Grafton is either at or below the growth over 9 years with the districts that were mentioned last week. So we're not growing any faster than any other districts. In fact, we're growing slower. We're losing ground. If you look at the salary gaps that we had, again, Auburn's a little bit of an outlier, but Upton, Millbury, Shrewsbury, Sutton, Northbridge, our gaps are growing. We're losing ground to other districts year over year. And so the idea that we're going to sort of cap teacher salary as a way to like mitigate the overrides is a terrible idea. It's going to accelerate the loss of competitiveness that Grafton has to area districts, and we're going to move into a scenario where we can't hire teachers. We're going to be priced out of the market. People will not look at Grafton as a district that is a good district to go in and to consider when you look at all the towns around us. So I could not disagree with that strategy more vehemently. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. And the numbers are really clear here, and I would challenge anybody to pick another 3 districts in the area, and I guarantee they're going to look exactly the same. I didn't pick these. These were ones that Craig used. I used the ones that the Sustainability Commission brought up. I used the ones that the school department uses. It doesn't matter. We are at the lowest, and it's like it's crystal clear where we're at in terms of how we pay our teachers. So, yeah, not at all a feasible or reasonable or sustainable strategy to really consider somehow throttling the school committee from good faith negotiations with the bargaining units. I couldn't disagree with that more. So I just wanted to sort of show that the increases over time, the contracts over time that Grafton have negotiated are not the problem, and they're also not the solution going forward. Like, we need to just leave those alone and let the school committee and the superintendent do their work, and continue supporting our teachers, because we have great teachers and we want to keep that quality of teachers, and we need to be competitive enough so that we can execute that strategy that you're talking about, Angelina, where people are willing to pitch in and make the district work. That's the only reason. And when you start to sort of pay less and less and less, the message to the teachers is, we don't care about you as much. And that is not an approach that I think has any wisdom whatsoever. Does not make sense to me. So I just wanted to, and I urge anybody in the public to go look at the DESE website. It is super, super easy to find data, and go look at Grafton and all the towns around us, and you will not find a town that works more efficiently than we do in terms of how we pay teachers, and the results that we get from the school system. It just doesn't exist.
I'd like to piggyback on that a little bit quick. Again, the focus when we're talking about employees has been on school staff, because that does seem to be the group that is being attacked the most. In these discussions, or singled out the most instead of attacked. On the municipal side, we're hearing the same things through exit interviews and departures. People love the environment here. They enjoy working for the town. They enjoy the people that they work for. Those 3 right there come up consistently. That I would follow them wherever they were going. The crux of why they end up leaving is generally money. And I know that is not uncommon from the private sector. That happens everywhere. But I want to highlight that, we have fewer municipal staff compared to the schools. So that may happen less on the municipal side, or in a less noticeable fashion on the municipal side than it does on the school side. But the impact is the same. We are losing people to other municipalities because they have the ability to pay more. So, you can dismiss it as that's life, or, choose to read into it some. It's up to you. But to me, that's telling. If people are not leaving this job, a municipal job, because they're not miserable, they love it here, but they just are getting other money elsewhere, that tells me that we're doing a lot of things right. We just unfortunately are lacking here. And even throughout all this discussion, these override options, you know, even the strengthen option that we've talked about is restoring the 6.5 school positions that were cut last year. We're not talking about the types of increases to salary or anything that have been discussed here. You know, or trying to increase really our competitiveness. We're talking about maintaining the level that, you know, that we're putting in now, and hoping that that ends up remaining competitive in the overall market. So that's it.
Just about the strike, Brookline did get 6% for increase in wages and stipends over 3 years, plus an additional 8% for the next 3 years. So it was 14 that they got. They did only strike for 1 day in Brookline, but they got 14% over 3 years. And I think it was Newton that struck for 11 days, and they got in big trouble for that. But it just is generally kind of a terrible thing to happen for the kids, for the parents, for the teachers, for everyone involved. It's not good.
And last time we had one of those here was 1974, 73.
Before I was born.
Yeah. I mean, I'm probably the least tenured person to have moved to Grafton. I've been here for 2 years. And I will say, right, you move to Grafton, the American dream, you buy a home, you can do all this. And we came here for the schools, the land, the town itself, right? And to kind of hear these discussions now of like the school spending too much municipality, it's one town, right? I always think of it that way. Like, I think if we dilute from the municipality, we dilute from the schools, we're all going to see that, right? Like, if you are financially savvy in any way, sort of form, your property value will only go up if the town succeeds, right? That's ultimately the end goal, right? Regardless if you have kids in the system, you do not. Like, that is what we want, right? We want everyone to be better off in 5 years than they were now. So thinking of all this, like, I understand level service, but I am somewhat disappointed that we aren't thinking even of strengthen at all. I think, right, for us to get to where we want to be, we need to have those discussions. Maybe that's the next time around. But, you know, we are all going to benefit from level, if not better than level services. And it's just the way we are here with not a big commercial presence that it's hard to grow that revenue line, right? So, again, like, I think this town is great, and I think we have our better days are ahead, but for me as a younger resident of the town, it is remarkable to see everyone come together and so passionate about it. And hopefully we get to the bottom of where we need to go to grow the town, right? But more importantly, strengthen it moving forward. So I do appreciate everyone's hard work here.
And I do have one last thought for that. One of the things you also hear is my kids can't afford to live here. And that should be a sobering thought as well.
I have one question. Can you just repeat the BVT numbers you say were coming in on the 12th of this month?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Can I ask you a question about BVT? Well, we're
Prefer you
talking
didn't,
about
but go ahead.
budget. The we have, well, could we not do BVT as an option? Is that something that is, like, does a town have to have a technical option? While we're talking about directions of things, I mean, I feel like you have to talk about everything. I'm not trying to be popular.
I think you would have to go back to the regional school district vocational setup in the legislature in it's 13 or 17 towns in this district, and somehow figure a way to get out of that. But then where are you going to teach the kids trades that want to go to a trade school? We've eliminated all the industrial arts stuff that we used to have in town.
I just think BVT is expensive. That's all.
Angelina, Chapter 74 of the Massachusetts General Laws requires every city and town to provide access to vocational technical education, secondary schools for students. We have no choice. We have to offer it.
And at the time it came out, it was probably the most comprehensive thing you could get to teach the kids a trade. And the state has changed what you have to teach kids going to that school now to make it even more expensive.
I am meeting with the superintendent tomorrow, actually, I don't know if I'll get the full number, but that's part of the intent is to have that conversation.
I guess
I'll let 'em know
I
that
would
you want
be, like the finance part of me would like to know what the difference between BVT and another tech school is, as far as like our contribution and that kind of thing. Like if we were to change schools that we were working with, would that make any kind of a difference? And maybe it wouldn't move the needle at all. I have no idea. It'd just be more of a hassle than anything else, but.
You know, Mary and I working in another town, it's comparable funding.
Is it?
Honestly, yeah. We don't see a huge, well, I'm not speaking for you, but I don't see a huge difference between what we were seeing in the western part of the state to what we're seeing in this part of the state, as far as tech schools go.
They all spend more money per.
Yeah, almost all of them spend more money per, but they're also, they're teaching kids a different
Right.
methodology, right? So those costs are gonna be different to a certain extent.
Anybody else?
I guess Matt, to follow, I mean, I don't still know what happened to Auburn, but I can say that it's remarkable to me that Auburn's cut their staff by more than half in FTEs from 2014 to 15 to 23-24, and still saw a 13% increase. So imagine that has to do with a lot of why they're not comparable to the other districts. Assuming a lot of those staff were adding to that, if they were
Makes
still at the
sense.
same level.
Yeah. And look, we're still $4,000
Yeah.
below them average out, so we're still below that.
And didn't cut half our fees.
Right. So yeah, I didn't bother sort of looking into why.
Yeah.
Because I didn't think that was relevant. That's just an outlier.
Yeah.
But I did want to be consistent with the district, the towns that Craig mentioned, so that we could just be consistent with the ones that he mentioned in terms of tax rate. I thought that was important.
Definitely.
Multitude of rabbit holes.
Okay. I mean, it feels like we made some good progress here tonight. I feel like there was some really good discussion. I appreciate the finance committee's input on all this. And, slight little kick in the bum to move us along. Anybody have anything else, they wish to discuss before we consider adjourning? For the select board's part, I'd just like to thank you guys for coming in tonight and participating. And before we go, thank the chair for spending her birthday here with all of us.
Happy birthday.
Oh, yes.
Happy to. Couldn't imagine a better place to spend my birthday.
Oh, you need to go. You need to get out.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
I could take a motion to adjourn the select board.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I second your motion, Mark. He's already gone to sleep.
I'm still here.
Mark never sleeps.
Mark never sleep.
A motion to adjourn the finance committee.
Second.
All right. We have a motion to adjourn. Mark,
Aye.
Greg,
Aye.
Heather,
Aye.
Dan. You as a late peer get to also vote.
I've been on for about 10 minutes now. Aye.
Thank you. Angelina.
Aye.
Samir. Skip.
Aye.
Kyle.
Aye.
Victoria is aye. Is unanimous. We are adjourned. And thank you for